Welcome. Hope everyone is enjoying the conference thus far. We are super excited to have Fred Zhang, serial entrepreneur and co-founder of LongevityDAO, joining us today.
I'm very glad to be here, Stephanie. Thanks for having me on.
We're so excited and thrilled to have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what you're working on. So with that said, please, kick off. Tell us a little about yourself and what you're doing these days.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I guess I'll give a little bit of background on my history. And I think that naturally dovetails pretty well into LongevityDAO, the motivation for getting it started, and where we are now. So my background is actually as a serial entrepreneur. I did my first startup back in 2005, many years ago with YCombinator. Decided to go back to school and get a bachelor's and PhD in economics. And then afterwards, I founded an online education company that does adaptive testing and test prep. And then kind of exited from that in 2019. And did pretty well from that. And then from that point on, I decided to go into two fields that I had been interested in for a very long time. One was crypto, which I first heard about in 2011, actually, and I wasn't too sure of it then, but then got more into it in 2013. And then the other field was longevity, which like a lot of like I started when I was really young, when I was 5 and first found out that people, had to die. And I was kind of sad about that. And then realized over the next 10, 20 years that, well, maybe that's not necessarily an inevitability as much as it's that people aren't aware of how far technology has gone and how much potential there is to kind of solve the longevity problem. So I've dabbled in a few projects in crypto and realized that crypto is a great area for raising funding. You have these tokens that come out that are supporting, dog memes and things like that. And that's all well and great. But I was thinking, here you can raise billions of dollars for dog memes and things like that. And then you have another field, longevity, where even $10 million raised can allow 10 grad students to work really hard on a serious problem for 10 years. And I thought, why not match the two? Why not have a crypto system that uses crypto means to raise funding for real longevity and medical research, an area that really needs it. So that's kind of the basis for LongevityDAO that we have today.
Fantastic. Well, really excited to hear a little bit more about it. Just for those people who may not be as familiar, very quick, high level, can you explain what a DAO is?
Yeah. So a DAO originally stood for a decentralized autonomous organization. Basically, it's the idea that with the blockchain technologies we have today, we can form a new sort of organization where it's not, citizens going to a polling booth to vote or shareholders going to a board meeting to vote, but people who own a token or own an NFT can be the essential owners and governors of an organization. And then everything the organization does, like, if it's an organization doing investments, what investments it makes. If it's an organization doing, let's say, for longevity, what companies to support, all those decisions can be done on the blockchain where each NFT or each token can do a vote. And then all the actions can happen on blockchain.
Thank you for sharing all that. And in terms of Web3, can you give everyone a little bit of a refresher and explain how it relates to our discussion today?
Yeah, for sure. So the background of Web3 is the idea that it's the next iteration of the web. There's Web 1 where, content providers would create content, like New York Times would write content themselves and people would read it. Web 2, which is what Facebook tries to be. It tries to be a platform where the content that's being created is also being generated by the community. Web 3 is taking that one notch up and making even the technology and hosting also decentralized as part of the web. So instead of using Amazon Web Services to create a website, you might create a website on IPFS, which is a decentralized, uncensorable system that no one can take down and anyone can participate in. Instead of using DNS, which is kind of this domain name system that has ties to the US government and so forth, you actually have ENS, which is a Ethereum name system. And instead of using the walled garden of, the Federal Reserve, US dollars and the walled garden of Visa, where they can eject you for not liking your political views, or if you don't do enough KYC, you use Bitcoin or Ethereum, where it's uncensorable and it's a decentralized payment system. So it's basically making it so that you don't have any centralization to the maximum extent possible in all aspects of the web. And the reason it's relevant to LongevityDAO is that we're creating an organization where the organizational structure conforms to that Web3 ideology, where the organization in the long run won't be centralized. It'll be NFT owners and token owners making the votes and directing where the organization goes.
So how do NFTs relate to the LongevityDAO?
Yeah, that's a great question, because NFTs is kind of our bread and butter for LongevityDAO right now. If you have one Bitcoin, you can divide it into 100 and then give it to 100 of your friends evenly. And those friends can subdivide that 100 to another 1,000. And you can actually get pretty fine grained with Bitcoin. And each, little bit of Bitcoin can combine with other bits of Bitcoin to form a larger whole. It's just like US dollars and things like that in that way. Now, non-fungible tokens is another set of assets that exist on the blockchain, with the exception that you can't actually divide it. So one NFT could represent a cool Picasso painting, and I can give you the NFT or you can buy it from me, but I can't split that Picasso painting into two. So it represents kind of a singular, unsplittable, unique object on the blockchain. The way that we're first going to start helping real longevity companies is by issuing NFTs. The first project we have is called Cryonauts. It's a series of 10,000 NFTs that is minting for 1 ETH each. All the funds will go towards Tomorrow Bio, which is a real life on the ground biostasis company in Germany. So it's going to help them develop the new technologies needed to preserve people better and kind of achieve the longevity mission. So that's our first foray. Our second flagship product is actually for Lifespan.io. It's a product called Lifespan Legends that Keith and I are working on. And Keith being the president of Lifespan.io. All those proceeds are going to Lifespan.io and helping the great mission they have there with regards to education, investment, political action, and so forth. So the base case is you issue these NFTs, it raises funds, we give it to Lifespan.io, and everyone's super happy. But there's actually more than just that. NFTs are also really good for raising publicity, because people will have them around in their wallets. People ask them, "Hey, what was that NFT?" And then the person can say, "Hey, I used this to fund Lifespan.io." So it's a very tangible artifact, a kind of a souvenir that you can keep around and raise publicity in that way. The other thing we really like about NFTs is that it allows for more meaningful informational interaction. So one of the NFTs can be Roger Bacon, which is a historical character. That character can have dialogues with other characters in the longevity space. And so you generate continual interest and continual extra engagement and information. On the fundraising front, there's more than just the mint proceeds. Every time these NFTs are traded, generally the social custom is at a small amount. 5% of the amount traded continue going toward the organization. So Lifespan.io will continue getting 5% of all the trades from Lifespan Legends through indefinitely. Whereas if you were to have issued a standard token, the general convention is that it trades on Uniswap, and then no more funding. Once the tokens are fully minted, no more funding would go towards Lifespan.io. So I think those two dimensions help.
So how did you hear about us, and how did you get involved with this idea?
I think Leaf has been great, and Lifespan.io has been great, because it's actually one of the main mechanisms through which I became re-engaged in longevity. So I knew about Lifespan.io even like 2-3 years ago in searching for how to get interested in longevity again. I signed up for the Longevity Investors Network through Lifespan.io. I did some donations to Sens, and they referred me to Lifespan.io as well. So I think you guys do an amazing job of being one of the largest public-facing organizations supporting longevity. If you do any Google searches, the content marketing and the actual base content quality is great. I know you guys have the Life Noggin series on YouTube. So I think hearing about Lifespan.io is kind of one of the strengths of the organization itself, is that it's very good at attracting publicity to begin with. Now, we got started working together because the president, Keith Comito, has been such a strong visionary in what the metaverse in the future can be. He has his day job and his other work actually intersect with the metaverse and NFTs and online symbols quite a bit. So we introduced to each other by a large donor in the crypto space. And then we immediately clicked. I was telling him about how we're trying to help longevity organizations, and he was talking about how great NFTs were, and was the one that actually introduced me to this idea of it needs to be something more than NFTs. It needs to be a metaverse. It needs to be characters that can interact with each other, how these different planets, these different sets of NFTs helping different longevity organizations should one day, collaborate and interact with each other in a more non-trivial way. In developing LongevityDAO, we started about a year ago. And the first thing that I'm taught to do as a serial entrepreneur is do tons of customer development. That means talking to everyone to see what their real needs are versus using our guess of what the ecosystem needs in order to make our company. So we talked to a bunch of large philanthropists in the longevity space. We talked to a number of companies to see what they want to do, what helps them the most, and how they're most comfortable in the crypto ecosystem. And what we found is that while we started out thinking maybe we should do a token, an ERC20 token or a standard token to help these longevity companies, a lot of longevity companies weren't really comfortable getting started issuing a token just yet because they weren't sure what the implications of it being a security would be. Whereas for NFTs, a bunch of very serious longevity organizations, including Lifespan.io and Tomorrow Biostasis, were very comfortable issuing NFTs in order to raise funding. So part of it was kind of a pull versus a push from the longevity organizations. And then as we got more into it, we realized that NFTs actually have a lot more creative potential as well. This is actually very much due to the work of an innovation of Keith. So through this mechanism, through this path, I found out more about the metaverse, how NFTs are actually going to be just the start of a new way that people will see reality in 10, 20 years. And that got us into creating a metaverse for helping longevity and the longevity movement overall.
Yeah, and we're really working hard to try and help advocate and create awareness around all the developments that are happening in this space. So now to kind of pivot a bit into more practical application and how everyone can get their hands onto this and get involved. So what exactly is the forthcoming Lifespan Legends NFT series? I know you've touched on it before, but in a way where we understand how we can get involved and why might we want to be involved?
LongevityDAO.net is kind of the main project and the main website to go to. So if you go there, the top two things, again, joining our Discord server and following us on Twitter, that puts even if you don't have very much time right now, I would recommend doing that right now, because then you'll be reminded in the upcoming weeks to follow up.
Right now, okay.
Yes, right now. The second step is if you go and click on our projects, one of our NFT projects on top of our website is Lifespan Legends NFT. If you go there, you can see all the cool stuff that Lifespan Legends will become in the future. For example, it's going to be an NFT that has airdrops of future tokens. It'll have story-based interactions between the NFTs. You'll be able to integrate this with biomarker diagnostics that are on-chain. I know that Lifespan.io and Keith are working on other projects on the DeSci side, which is decentralized science, where you can put your biomarkers and things like that on the blockchain. You'll also be able to have cameo appearances in the Lifespan.io full-length feature films, Discord tags, and NFT interactions, and so forth. So there's a lot of features and benefits to this roadmap, which are growing every day. But if you go there, check that out, and then join the Discord specifically for the Lifespan Legends NFT on our Discord server. That'd be great. And the thing that you can do to help us the most now is that we're not minting just yet. We're going to mint in the future, and we'll announce it to everyone when we do mint. But you can already start giving us feedback for what you like to see in Lifespan Legends by clicking on the get a 50% discount link, and you can vote on chain. It costs just maybe $1 worth of gas or something, and we don't receive that. It's basically, the cost needed to process this transaction on the blockchain. You can tell us what you want to see more of, whether you want to see more of a metaverse or more community events. And by doing that, you become one of our VIP members, because we know that you were willing to kind of join even at the very beginning. So that's the best way to get involved. I personally actually am reaching out and doing one-on-one full-on hour calls with all of our beginning members just to see what you want. So you'll probably get a reach out from me if you want. It's optional. You don't have to take my call, but you'll get a reach out from me and we'll discuss what sorts of stuff you want to see most in the Lifespan Legends. So that's kind of basically a sketch of how to get involved. On the minimal front, go to our site, Discord, Twitter. If you want to do the most helpful thing for us, get on our whitelist survey, fill out our survey on the blockchain, and then get a discount while getting direct access to me to talk about what you like to see most. So that's how you get involved. Why do you want to get involved? I guess I spoke a little bit about the perks that will be there. I think, Lifespan.io is a nonprofit. And if you're a person that has donated in the past or consider donating in the future, this is a good way to kind of give money to Lifespan.io and get a nice souvenir from it. And something that, as we build the metaverse, has the potential to evolve and develop even to be a bigger thing even. So I think for the donative aspect, you can do it for that. The second reason is for the standard reason for NFTs. You like collecting them. You like being part of a NFT project that has a pretty long roadmap that will get more and more involved. The third reason would be if you want to participate in the Lifespan.io and the LongevityDAO Metaverse in the future. I know Keith has wonderful plans for other things and other NFTs that he has. There will be integrations with those, and then as well as integrations with other LongevityDAO Metaverse projects like the Cryonauts will have and the LongevityDAO native NFTs will have. And things like that. So those are kind of the main reasons we've been hearing from community members for why they got involved.
How does this bear market impact what you're doing right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Bull markets are definitely easier to launch with. Bear markets, though, I think are better for building serious community and getting people who are really in it for the long run involved. So during the top of bear markets, whenever we would do user interviews and community interviews, I think there were a lot of people we talked to who said, oh, we just got into it like 2 months ago. And the reason that we're involved in crypto is because, it's been so lucrative in the last couple of months. We actually already have some products that are online. So for crypto cryonauts, we allow people to pay small amounts of fees to get on the whitelist. So we have paid community members of LongevityDAO already. I think in the bear market, you actually do get better filtration for the dedicated people. And then, during the bull markets, everyone who entered during this point in time get quite rewarded as well. So I think it has its advantages, but obviously from a total funding point of view, the bull markets are definitely better.
There are a lot of critiques. And so how might you respond to some of those common NFT criticisms?
The most common ones I hear that have some semblance of legitimacy. And these are things that, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, really smart people have said is, oh, it's just speculation. The only thing that is in the crypto space is it's a greater fool's theory. The only reason people buy Bitcoin is so that they think that they can sell it to someone else who values Bitcoin more later on. And I think that's actually not quite right. And I think a good analogy of this is actually the desktop computer revolution. So basically the main theme here is that a lot of new technologies at the beginning look like they're useless, look like it's all hype and enthusiasts and very few real world applications. And it takes decades for the real world applications to come through. So the critique against desktop computers then was it's just a paperweight. No, there's no real use for desktop computers. Who needs academic level fluid simulators and artillery shell calculators on their desktop? It's just the computer industry, Apple, Microsoft, these people scamming mom and pops out of their hard-earned money by saying, oh, this is going to be like interesting trend or something you want to get on top of right now. It's just them building off of this hype. But it turns out spreadsheet applications came, then word processors came, and then emails came. And it became really clear in the late 90s how useful computers were because of these applications that came afterwards. I think for crypto, we're in the exact same phase right now. There are some nascent applications that are more than just speculation, like Uniswap is exchanging different assets in a decentralized way. You also have Polymarket that lets you make real predictions on events on the blockchain. And you have a bunch of other lending technologies that are growing in the space as well. And smart contracts on Ethereum let you buy and sell real world goods without needing a lawyer to hold escrow, because escrow contracts can be done on blockchain. So you're getting these nascent real applications right now. And I think in 10, 20 years, it'll become very clear what the killer applications are. I think the metaverse is definitely one of them. But anyway, circling back to the criticism, there's some other risks that people have brought up in the past. One is, climate change risk. And we all know that, Bitcoin and even Ethereum right now, a lot of coins, you need to run computations in order to sustain the blockchain. Fortunately, I think a lot of those computations are moving towards proof of stake. So my personal view is kind of with the Ethereum mainstream view, getting off of proof of work probably is the good thing to do. Some people on the Bitcoin side are like, well, you need proof of work in order to make it most secure. I do think it's not the worst thing that Bitcoin has proof of work. The amount of proof of work rewards is going to, half every few years. This is the so-called Bitcoin halvening. So that the amount of waste going to proof of work on Bitcoin is going to decline over time. So I think, it's the climate risk critique is a real one, but it's, getting solved in multiple ways through the different chains. There's other risks that people have mentioned with regards to, their scams coming out and things like that. I think at the beginning of a lot of new technologies, you'll always have a little bit of scams because the entire thing of getting into a technology, investing in a technology or anything is this idea that you're believing in what someone is saying about 20 years in the future. You're giving people credit for a story about the future versus proven, productivity in the last 10 years. Now, any real technology will quite correctly, like Amazon, for example, right? Like in 1999, people are like, maybe it's a scam. How is it trading at 100x its revenue and it's not even profitable? But it turns out that the future promise of Amazon was quite worth it and justified the valuation. But because you could tell a good story like Amazon about how Amazon's going to be 1,000 times bigger in 20 years, you could tell the same story about pet food, and then you get like Pets.com being valued at $3 million. $3 billion back then, I think, something around that. And then that turned out, to be a lot of hot air and everyone lost their money there. So I think the technology promise and some amount of scams go hand in hand. And I think having legitimate, education of the technology enthusiasts is probably the best way to fight it. Like having earnest communities of people saying, hey, this one looks like it's a real effort and it succeeded. This one is an earnest effort, but it failed, but it wasn't dishonest. And this third prong, these people are just dishonest. If you have concerns yourself, specifically about Lifespan Legends, where it's going to go, Cryonauts and LongevityDAO, we're doing tons of outreach right now. So you can ask directly there.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I used to work at Singularity University, and the notion that we shared with executives at all these massive organizations was that these exponential and emerging technologies are not just accelerating, they are converging. And so what you imagine as a status quo for yesterday is not going to be the same for tomorrow, because the landscape and the respective dynamics are going to keep shifting, and people are going to continue working on these novel, avenues for development. And so new things are going to just start popping up, whether people are speculating about the practical applications of certain things or not. The progress is coming. Somebody's going to do it. And so just changing your mindset to be more open to the fact that, what the world looks like today is not going to be the case tomorrow, I think is a first step. And even evaluating everyone's own personal critiques of these new technologies.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think even though we can't exactly predict the future, we know it's going to be quite different in the next 20 years just by looking at the progress from 20 years ago. So all the economic pieces are going to change a lot. There's going to be a ton of gaps. And then you have this kind of background bubbling interest in cryptocurrencies and smart contracts. Those are going to fill some of the new niches. It's hard to predict maybe exactly what niche, but this convergence and this new set of technologies will create new opportunities in that way. And I mean, you might have some opinions on this from Singularity University as well. But one other thing that I think is really useful for people to keep in mind about crypto, as with all technologies, is at the very beginning, all the parameters are really, really bad, are really, really low. So everything is kind of broken and it's easy to make jokes about it. But in the long run, all these parameters get a lot better. Like the first iPhone, I remember, would crash during the middle of calls. It could barely handle anything, a normal phone can do. So you would wonder, why would iPhones ever take off? And then, 10 iterations later, it's actually way faster. They criticized Bitcoin in 2011 for the same reason. Oh, it's 60 minutes for a transaction. And, you need to do all these crazy things and it costs $20. Well, now Solana lets you do it in under 2 seconds for 1/100th of a cent. So you have to imagine the technology as it will be, not today.
So in the next 6 to 12 months, how do you foresee this landscape shifting?
Yeah. So the main thing that is on a lot of people's minds, I mean, if you look at the Twitter sphere, is valuation. And one of my past hats that I had on was as an economist. So I do think that given the current economic landscape, at least in the US, interest rates are probably going to continue going up a bit. And this is definitely a headwind for all growth assets. So you see like all the NASDAQ going down, anything that's kind of technology based going down. This is because things that are technology based tend to have most of their promise many years out in the future. So like if you're, developing the metaverse and your Facebook or something, a lot of your cash flows might be in the year 2050. That becomes very interest rate sensitive because if the interest rate goes between 3% to 10%, that cash flow 30 years from now is worth way less than if you're like an oil exploration company where your cash flows are going to come immediately in the next 3 years. So on the macro front, I think you do probably have some headwinds in the next few months or so. So I think there's a need in the crypto sphere to be somewhat honest about that. And I think, that is something to be aware of. Once you're aware of that, though, I think there are a lot of really great trends in the crypto world. So the Ethereum merge is coming up. So this is the move from proof of work to proof of stake. That's going to address a lot of climate issues. If you look at prediction markets like Polymarket, they're giving it a 95% chance of success by the month of either November or December. So this is pretty much a sure thing now at this point. That addresses climate risk. That also has price implications too, I think, because there's this idea that Ethereum right now needs to mint a lot more new ETH to reward the miners who are doing proof of work. They need to do that way less after the merge. So that probably will be a tailwind for crypto prices overall. So I think those are the two main forces at play. The last 12 months have seen lots of fundraising in the crypto space. So the amount of real dollars in a lot of these crypto companies is way higher now. And I would know because I personally invested on the angel side in a number of them. So there are lots of people, lots of legitimate and high-grade engineers, researchers, and so forth, who are now dedicated for years of their lives to work on this thing. So all those new technologies are slowly going to get built, regardless of what the crypto prices are in the short term. So I think we'll be seeing more serious metaverse efforts, other deed, and so forth. And we'll be seeing way more evolution of the base blockchain technology, the optimism rollups and the ZK rollups and things like that allow us to store way more information on the blockchain, make transactions way cheaper and faster. So I think the secular trend is going to continue there.
Fred Zhang, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you and the space that you're working in and how it relates to a topic that's near and dear to everyone who is actually attending this conference. Obviously, there's interest if you are here, and we have a lot of big work to do, and we need your support. So just to wrap up, Fred is working on a lot of exciting stuff in longevity and Web3, and NFTs do have a noteworthy presence. So please stand by for some exciting developments, which are geared towards supporting longevity biotech space and Lifespan.io specifically.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me on. I think it was great to talk about our project with people who are interested in longevity. And I'm especially excited about Lifespan Legends to support you guys, because I think you guys are doing absolutely fantastic work in awareness space and in bringing the fight of longevity to the forefront of people's minds.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this interview, and stay tuned for upcoming talks and sessions on the schedule, and enjoy the rest of the conference.